On both sides of the Atlantic, the reputations of the blustering blonde bombshells are dangling by a thread. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and former President Donald Trump both blame witch hunts and conspiracies for their unravelling. Do they have a case, or are they both reading from the same populist playbook? Joining me now is former Director of Strategy for David Cameron, Fox News contributor Steve Hilton, and by former Conservative MP Louise Mensch. Louise, I want to read you a letter that someone's just tweeted from the Times letters page today. And it says, perhaps its most important mission for Eton College will be to ensure that its pupils are saved from a sense of privilege, entitlement and omniscience that can produce alumni such as Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Kwasi Kwarteng and Ben Elliott, and therefore damage a country's very fabric. And here's the stinger. Sadly, I failed in that purpose. John Clawton, Master, Eton College, 1984 to 2001. Wow, when the Eton teachers start distancing themselves from what's been going on, what do we make of that?
Well, I make of that the sound of a guy that loves his own voice and somehow thinks he's important. If I remember correctly, Boris, as a young man, went to Eton on a full scholarship. He didn't pay money for it because he was a clever kid who was fluent in Latin at the age of 7 years old. And when you started out, Piers, you said, is there a similarity here between Boris Johnson getting kicked out by basically a quango who didn't like him, who are, in my opinion, very up themselves and who have kicked him out of Parliament in a quasi-judicial proceeding.
Whoa, wait a second. This quango, as you put it, is made up of 7 people, 4 of whom are Conservative Brexiteers. Not quite sure how it works that they would be the ones leading the charge against Boris.
Well, at least one of them is not a Brexiteer, but is an ardent Remainer. And the others have some kind of personal beef with him. I think we all saw Bernard Jenkins during that questioning. It's pretty clear to me that he doesn't like Boris Johnson.
Actually, I thought he asked all the questions I'd have asked if Boris Johnson ever gave me an interview, which he doesn't. Steve Hilton.
Yes, but that's...
Let me bring in Steve. Steve, the similarities between Trump and Boris, do you see them? People used to always say they're different. I'm not so sure that difference is quite so wide now.
I totally agree. I mean, look, clearly their backgrounds are incredibly different, but the way they're behaving and the way they've been treated, I think is similar. I mean, it was really striking to me reading Boris's letter the other day that he literally used that word witch hunt, which is now such a kind of key part of Trump's political messaging. If you watch a Trump event these days, the people in the audience behind him literally holding up signs saying witch hunt.
Yeah.
So that's very similar. I think the other thing that actually more substantively is similar is that one of the reasons I think they produce such vitriol from their opponents is that in different ways at different times, they'd really challenged the policy basis of the kind of establishment groupthink for many, many years. Boris, obviously, with Brexit, where people in charge thought, this is unimaginable. We can't leave the EU. How dare you? Same with Trump in the challenges he brought to big issues like the US's relationship with China, wars in the Middle East, and so on. These were really deep challenges to the way people thought.
But is there a problem, Steve?
Is
the similar problem between them both is that you could tick a lot of boxes for good things they did, no question. You could do that with Boris, with Ukraine and other issues that he did, in my view, very impressively. But are they both their own worst enemies? In the sense that is most of the trouble completely because of their own behaviour and conduct?
It's so funny you should say that. I was just looking up, Piers, that famous saying about a politician. It was Labour politicians in the past, which is, he's his own worst enemy, someone said. And someone else said, not while I'm alive, he isn't. And I think there's a lot of people that would say that about those two. And I think you're completely correct that their own behaviour has contributed to it. But again, you can say, well, that's the price you pay for disruptive attitude. And in the business world, you see it the whole time, especially here where I am in Silicon Valley. These great, founders of tech firms often behave in really terrible ways.
Yeah,
I'm not excusing it.
Yeah.
But, the point is, well, that's what you get when you get these disruptive figures.
Yeah, listen, I think with all great men, there are often faults. We're looking at live pictures here. This is Donald Trump, we think, leaving. Just to bring you up to speed, he's been allowed to leave court without conditions or travel restrictions. No cash bond was required. He can't talk to another aide who's been indicted, Walt Nauta. And he will speak tonight at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey at 8 p.m. local time. It's 1 a.m. UK time. Louise, on Boris, the big question is, can he come back? And I guess the same question sort of applies to Trump, but he's kind of still there, albeit he's indicted. Can Boris really come back now? The party seems determined to get rid of him.
he can't come back right away. He can't come back until after the next election. So let's just put a pin in him. But I really think that the comparison between Trump and Boris is ridiculous. Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in an actual legal process. As you said earlier, these are very serious crimes. And the idea that he's being treated unfairly is frankly nonsense. A special counsel was appointed to look into every other single politician that took away classified documents. Trump had loads of chances, Piers, to avoid what's happening today. He was asked to give the documents back. If he'd just given them back, he wouldn't be in a courtroom today. It's his own fault. Can he run for president from prison? Look, if he's elected the supremacy clause, he'll be out of prison and he'll try to pardon himself.
OK.
But I think I think it's terrible for the GOP. If they don't let go this dream of Donald Trump, they are going to lose to Joe Biden,
let me ask
and they
Steve.
are going to lose huge.
Steve, let me ask you one question, or two questions. Who is going to be the Republican nominee and who's going to be the next president of the United States? Give me two names.
Okay. First of all, just want to say absolutely agree with everything Louise just said. To your questions, I think the GOP nominee will be Donald Trump. And the name I'm going to give you for the next president, Gavin Newsom, governor of the state of California.
Wow.
Right.
OK. Fascinating response. Steve, Louise, thank you both very much indeed. Greatly appreciated.